Behind me is a car that ruined me for life, and today I'm going to tell you all about it. So stay tuned. All right, guys, so something really cool happened yesterday. I owned this car previously, and I had the opportunity to buy it back, and here it is. And this is the car that started it all. Now, I've owned Lamborghinis and Audi R8s and stuff like that, but they were incredible cars, but something always felt like it was missing. This car, on the other hand, the no nanny, no traction control, no ABS brakes, just total raw, visceral experience of this car ruined me for life. And the initial story about this car was my buddy Dan from Downforce Motorsports. A friend of mine had bought a Cobra through him, and he put me in touch with Dan. And so I ended up ordering actually this car here, but it was on such a long lead time, this car had come up for sale. So Dan said, hey, let's get you in this car, let's get it off the street, let's get you some experience in one, and then when yours arrives, we'll sell this. So that's exactly what we did. Problem was, I fell in love with this car. This happened right during the pandemic, right in the beginning of the pandemic. So it was, the world was still figuring itself out, and there was a car show that was happening. It was outdoors. So of course, the day after, I jump in this and go straight to that car show. And we have something at the end of this video that's really cool related to that, so stay tuned. I show up at this car show, I drove it there. It was unlike anything else I'd ever driven on the highway, on the roads. It's got a different shift pattern transmission to it. It's actually a dog leg. So for me, trying to get used to first gear being left and down and second gear being up was definitely a learning curve. But by the time I got there, I was already feeling really comfortable. I just had the time of my life that day. It was so much different than any other car I'd ever experienced. So fast forward, we did have a couple issues to work out after we bought this car. So we got those handled. And immediately when I got the car back, it was dead summer of 2020. And it was hotter than heck. It was probably, I think it was like 97 degrees out that day. And I decide, with no working AC, that I'm gonna drive this to Tail the Dragon. We're in Charlotte, North Carolina, so it takes about 4 hours to get there. So what I did was I grabbed a freezer bag, I filled it full of ice, and stuck it on the back of my neck, jumped in this thing, and just started driving. Just in case you wanted to see what this is like, I got a 4-point harness. I got windows that don't roll down. I got AC, but it's the old school stuff. Here's the dash. I brought a bag of ice that's almost melted for the back of my neck because that, no power steering, brakes, a lot of power, and I got about 2.5 hours left of a 3.5 hour drive. And I'm loving every second of this. I made more gas station stops on that trip than ever in my life, and not to fill up. It was actually to fill up my bag of ice. So if you know anything about these cars, the engine's right behind your head, and this is the 15th car that Superformance ever built. So it doesn't really have that same separation between the motor as this one does. At least I feel that way. So this got hot. I meet up with some buddies about halfway there, and they're driving with me, and the tune on this car at the time was really rich. So they first pull up alongside me, and I take off on the highway, and I rev it out to red line, and I back off, and they told me we've got these 3-foot flames spitting out the back. So imagine seeing this thing driving down the highway. First, I would have loved to have seen this from the outside. It already has a presence, and then to see it, and it looks like a jet driving down. I mean, how cool is that? So we get up to this cabin. It's on this dirt road. I just don't care. I'll drive it off-road. I'll drive it on-road. I just want to drive it, right? That night, we make the plan for the next day. There's about 12 of us that are going to go through Tail of Dragon, and we're about 20 minutes from Tail. So we get up the next morning, and one of my buddies decides, hey, I want to ride with you. He was a younger kid, and I was like, by all means, come on in, but you're probably going to melt because, we've got no AC. He didn't care. He's like, I'll ride with you for half an hour, go through the Dragon, and then we'll call it a day. I could not peel him out of this car for 4 hours. He loved riding in this so much, and we're both sweating. We're both bright red. In fact, I remember there was one stop before we got to Tail, where they were doing road construction. And he and I were sitting in this thing. I felt like we were just a rotisserie, like we were just cooking. And we did not care. We never listened to any music. We basically never talked because we were just listening to the motor and just really experiencing the car. It was unbelievable. Fast forward, I actually drove through the Dragon a few times, had an issue with the car, decided I'm gonna just drive it straight back to Charlotte. Ended up just at the end of the day, putting another 4 hours in, coming all the way back. So between the 2 days, I put 12 hours of driving in this car with no AC, stopping for bags of ice for the back of my neck. And it was the most awesome, life-changing experience of my life. This right here is actually some photos that were captured from that trip of me driving through Tail. If you've ever been through Tail the Dragon, you know that you've got Killboy in there that does their photography, and I couldn't help but buy a couple prints and put them on the wall so they sit here in the barn garage. Now, fast forward a little bit because now I'm ruined for life. I cannot drive a modern car. In fact, in between owning this, I've owned a lot of cars, mostly classics, one of which I bought was a brand new Audi R8 V10 Performance. And if you know, that's like the mecca of the R8 world. I wanted something that didn't scream Lamborghini. Personally at the time, I just wanted something that I could daily that was fun. Because I'm so ruined by this car, I didn't enjoy it. I owned it, what did I own it for, Miller? Like a month? It was under a month. And I was like, I can't do it. And I sold it because you could see, like, there's something about getting in a car and becoming the car that you can't replicate in modern cars, in my opinion. The sad day came where this car arrived. We were buying this land, we're starting this animal rescue, and I decide that a couple cars at the time had to go. And you know, justifying owning 2 GT40s is generally not in the cards. So unfortunately, I sold this car. And this was, I think, the end of that year. So I actually owned it for less than a year. And I was sad until yesterday. This is literally the only car I've ever regretted selling. And the fact that I got the opportunity to buy it back has like made my world complete, I feel like. Like there was a piece of my soul in this car. It's just surreal that it's sitting behind me right now. Now, at the end of the video, like we said, there's gonna be something really cool that Miller's gonna share with you, and it also ties into this. This is the start of pretty much everything. What you're watching, what we're building on this channel, everything we're doing actually ties back to this. So the fact that this is in here is just unbelievable. So for this part of the video, I need to pay homage back to Carroll Shelby. So this is, if you know anything about Carroll Shelby, he always wore a cowboy hat. Now I've got these 2 GT40s sitting in my garage. Now these 2 cars are built by a company called Superformance. They're actually factory built, licensed continuation cars. They actually have the license from Saffer to be a GT40. Now, next to me over here sits my 2005 Ford GT. A quick funny story about that. My understanding is that Ford wanted to name the Ford GT a GT40. This is a tribute car to the history of these cars. The problem was the license, Carroll Shelby actually backed Superformance. They actually were in a big lawsuit in the early 2000s. You can look it up. And long story short, Carroll Shelby actually came behind Superformance and ended up backing them. Now he's obviously the original creator of the GT40 back in the 1960s for Le Mans. So that's a big deal. And that just shows to the quality of these cars. So Ford wanted to name their Ford GT40 a Ford GT40, but they couldn't because Superformance, now with Carroll Shelby, had the license for the GT40. So now Ford had to name their car the Ford GT. Now, these cars are named GT40 because they only sit 40 inches tall. Literally, you can measure it. This car sits exactly 40 inches. The Ford GT, on the other hand, sits 43 inches. Interesting. Going a little bit about this car in particular, Superformance started building these in the early 2000s, and this car is actually the 15th car they ever produced, which is super cool. They build about 2 of these a month. That's what they've been restricted to. There's less than 500 cars that exist. I think the next allocation, if you want one, is pushed out pretty far now. I think it's end of 2025. So it's becoming very difficult to get your hands on these. Now, this is number 406. This is my more modern build, and this obviously being car 15. They look similar. They're very different cars, and we're gonna do another episode actually just about that, pointing out the differences. A lot of history behind this car, and something very special. Before Carroll Shelby passed away, he actually sat in this car personally and he signed the dash. I mean, come on. It's like so cool. So there's just so much to this ride that more than meets the eye, and very different driving experiences actually from all three of these cars. Super cool. I feel super honored and blessed to be able to own even one of these, let alone three. A lot of people have been asking me, are you gonna get the trifecta? And I argue, I wanna get the quadrecta, I don't know how to say that, but so Mark 1 GT40, Mark 2 GT40, 4 GT, and then you have the modern one. The problem is though, I might need someone to drive the modern GT when I get it because I don't know if I'm gonna be able to drive it after driving these cars just because of the raw experience. Miller will drive it. I appreciate you guys sitting and listening to the story. I know this is a totally different format from what we've been doing. I hope you enjoy this. We're probably gonna do some more of this on the channel, doing some storytelling. And now Miller's got something kind of fun to talk to you about. So this one's for Brad.
Are you gonna wear it?
No, you're gonna wear it.
Thanks, I was a little cold. Do you hear that? That's the sound of freedom.
We're so ridiculous.
The next clip is just gonna be it.
Wait, hold on. Here, hold on.
You gonna wear yours as a bib?
Yeah. This is
so great.
This is ridiculous. Brad, this is for you. All right, take it away, Miller.
So, one of the first times that I've ever seen actually this car in person was the day he was talking about going to that car show. I think he was still getting used to the clutch. I could smell it about 30 cars behind him. But
or clutch went out.
The clutch went out, yeah, the clutch went out. And it was funny because I had just, the night before, I was like feeling a little unmotivated. I was new to Charlotte. I hadn't been to a car show yet in Charlotte. A few months after the Ford versus Ferrari movie came out, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna watch this movie and I'm gonna go to the car show tomorrow. And so I watched the movie. I, absolutely loved it. I've watched like it 3 or 4 times.
Dude,
just because it's
like every night, right?
Yeah, I fall asleep. Yeah. So I watched the movie. I wake up really early. I mean, it's the crack of dawn, and I drive an hour and a half down to South Carolina in the hot summer, and I'm rolling up, and I just hear this loud car. And this car's louder than any car I've ever heard before. Going in traffic, I'm like, what is that car? I can hear it, but I can't see it because it is so small. Like, it's a small car. It's hard to see in traffic. And so I see the Cobra take a turn. I'm like, no way, like that's a Cobra. Like, I've never seen one in person. And then I see the GT40 roll by, and that's when I got chills. I was like, I'm meant to be here, because I had watched that movie where they got designed what the importance of this car is the night before, and I was like, it's just destined to like see this car today. Like,
and you never see them at car shows.
I've never seen one before.
Still today, like if you see one, it's like what?
Yeah, they're so
random,
incredibly rare, and nobody else drives them.
No, they keep
you. So,
pretty much.
I think if all the other collectors that have these cars added up their miles, they wouldn't amount to.
What we did last month.
Oh yeah, yeah, the month you've had it. So I pull in there, I'm like freaking out because I had just seen the movie. I'm like, I know the importance of these cars, like so fresh in my mind. And I, walk up to Vinny. I, tell him I'm a photographer. If he ever wants to shoot, just let me know. Which kind of turned into, what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
And I mean, over the course of 3 years, I've done some drone work for his businesses. I've ridden in these cars. We went on a rally together. And just, really grown with these cars.
Yeah.
And, as friends and stuff. So now we're doing this awesome journey we've been doing.
Yeah, he's my brother from another mother now. And he's you've really come up in the best part of my car days.
Yeah.
You've been in like an intimate part of this.
Of what you've really grown into, like your style of cars. Because when I met you, you had just bought this car, but you had just sold a Lamborghini, your Viper, the R8.
Yep.
And I rode in the R8, your supercharger.
Oh yeah, that was a fun car.
Very briefly, very briefly. But you didn't have those cars long, and then you just started all of this, and that's kind of where I've been with you with all this. So having this car back is kind of special. We attempted to do a rally on this car.
Yeah, we're gonna do another story video just for that one.
It was crazy. We started in Chicago. We had Dan driving. What car was he in?
Our other GT40.
The other GT40.
Yep.
And then a day and a half later, Vinny was hauling this behind a U-Haul back to Charlotte.
Pouring rain, barely ran, got to the U-Haul place. Like, we're gonna tell this story. It was crazy. It was crazy we even got a trailer.
I'm really surprised. This car actually broke down on the tail of the Dragon. You remember? It was
It
right
did.
after
It was right after Tail of the Dragon.
Yep. So I mean,
that's right.
I had rode in one pass on this car in the Tail of the Dragon, man. These older motors, the less, I guess, what would you call them? Less advanced motors that they have in the earlier cars.
It was the new Holley EFI system they installed that went bad.
It didn't learn.
It didn't learn the car, and the other problem was the transmission had an issue. So it was a mix of things. But oh man.
But now, like, you can ride this car across this land right now and it wouldn't break. This car.
Well, maybe if you jump it.
Jump over it or jump it itself?
No, if you like jumped, if we drove it into the bowl and jumped it, it would probably break.
Maybe. Carroll Shelby built a good car. But now these cars are just indestructible.
Yeah.
And we'd take them. I would jump in these cars today and take them to the Dragon.
Oh yeah. Well, now we have 2 of them. Yeah. Now I'm talking to my insurance about how we can get you by the driver's seat of it. Well, I mean, if the Cobra's gonna go, you gotta drive something.
Oh, sweet.
So we're figuring that out.
That would be full circle to me. See, the first GT40 I ever seen, driving the first GT40. We might have to make that a video.
Yeah.
Cool. So
we can't wait for you to stay for this journey because we also have a transformation planned, a slight transformation, and then a bigger transformation over time for this car. We may put it back in the Crown Rally livery also at some point because that was just sick. And
we just race car livery for sure.
Yeah, yeah. It's our own custom, like
touch.
Vin Gigs and MC Production garage livery.
Oh,
dude,
really cool.
Listen, okay, so you had Carroll Shelby back in the day of Le Mans. Now we're not race car drivers and we're not trying to buy Ferrari. So like we're not of that significance, but listen, let's create our own modern history.
Let's do it.
Because that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
Especially since no one drives these. That's what we're trying to do. Anyway, so I'm glad you're here for that. All right, should we do an outro?
We'll just let the sounds of the car, raw sound of the car, do the talk.
Lead you into next episode.
See you guys next time.
See ya.